It was 2007, so things were very, there was a lot of good things happening. The economy, this was right before everything.
Right before the collapse of the secondary lending market, yeah.
And that's when I started. So
perfect time.
Yeah, awesome. So anyway, started with CBRE in Dallas at the time, and it was basically working for a year on the office side of things, like on the office brokerage side.
Okay, so that's what you started off because you have analysts. I mean, they have such a rich bench of shit there, right? So
and so I started on the brokerage side, and
really?
Yeah, it just jumped right in, and then like probably a year later, started working on data centers blindly.
So 2007 in Dallas.
Those that are watching Trimble Crow, big real estate company, Dallas focused, from Trimble Crow from Dallas.
How long were you there for?
I was at CBRE for 7 years.
And in 2007, I'm trying to think of who the monsters in the area. I mean, it had to have been digital, right? It's probably
it was really Digital Equinix. Digital became public in 2004, so they were really just starting to. I mean, they certainly had a portfolio, but it was starting, in my opinion, to really start to mature. That was just when turnkey data centers were, 1.2 megawatts.
Yeah.
2 in at the electrical in plus 1.
Any color you want, as long as it's black.
That's right.
Right. So, that was pioneering in many ways.
100%.
How they created that fixed form factor, whatever you want to call it now. But they're like, look, they learned how to homogenize the ecosystem of the industry.
Yes.
By trying to not have to customize or create mechanical electrical infrastructure to support it, they just really built the block around what they could get off the shelf. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
And people don't realize that.
Not at all. And, I always tell people, I feel like I had looking back, I feel like I had a front row seat of,
you did.
The change, the evolution, the growth of our space. And, in some ways I still feel like I'm front row seat. It really hasn't changed, because the market continues to shift. It continues to change.
It's iterative, though, compared to that. I mean, it's not saying, I don't think we're at a plateau again. I think we're doing that, but I do think there was a time, and that's why I'm trying to dive back in and figure out when did I see, rather than the genesis in general of the industry, but when did I see this huge uptick? And I'm like, I would say it's probably right around that same time is when we saw that huge spike. And then that's when it became more prevalent. And that's when wholesale became prevalent.
Yeah, and I think, another thing that you brought up just with 2007, 2008, I would say I think the data center industry is where it is today because of the issues in 2008, 2009 with the mortgage, crisis. And really what that did to the economy. You had companies, historically banks, technology companies said, we own this stuff. We're always going to own it. Like, you can't tell me what I need to build or how to build it because we do it. And all of a sudden, they didn't have the money to spend anymore on their infrastructure, and they needed to shift those expenses to a lease. And the Digitals of the world, the Cyrus Ones, the QTSs, these companies were starting to form. So they really became the place.
Stoked the fire.
Yes, that these companies could grow. And all they had to do, they had to convince the C-level that you could actually lease a pod,
a CapEx model.
Yes, and it would be electrically and mechanically its own thing in a building with others. And once that was done, that was, in my opinion, kind of the gas to the fire of the wholesale market. And
it's interesting. Wow, I guess I'm an idiot, right? It's like a man talking to his puppy, right? So I'm sitting here thinking, I thought it was the adoption rate of technology is emerging, IoT or EIIO. Sure. But that actually makes way more sense because we individually don't have the ability to move the needle that fast.
Yeah.
But those collectives, those aggregations of demands, you have magnitudes of difference with 5 companies.
Yep.
That are like outsourcing all their IT compute or taking what was probably a DR model into a full production.
Yeah.
I never thought that that's probably what tipped it.
Yeah.
And that's crazy.
And there were other, I'm sure there were other things, but when I look at, and I came at it from a real estate perspective. I mean, I always think it's interesting to hear how people entered our space, entered this industry because it's so different. Not a lot of people did it intentionally. They were working here. I mean, I got into commercial real estate at CBRE to work on office buildings, but found this very interesting, very capital intensive growth space that has not stopped growing.
How did you see it though? Did you recognize that instantly when you went there? Where you said you started on Office, like TI, right?
Yeah.
So then how did you get exposed to the data center?
I just, I joined a team that was starting to focus on helping. Well, that's the truth. At the time, CBRE was pushing their people to be experts in different areas.
Verticals, yeah.
Yeah. And so at the time, they were wanting the brokerage teams to focus on like a specific submarket, geography.
That's smart.
If you're going to focus on uptown, you're downtown, this, that. We ended up focusing on data centers and not a specific submarket, kind of, I guess, Dallas. But the reality is, if you want to understand, if you want to help people with their data center geographic selection, what type of product they should go into, you've got to know Chicago, you've got to know Phoenix, you have to have that kind of, in my opinion, national knowledge,
practice.
Yeah, to really do well, and to help customers that you're working with. And so I did not know at the time that like the space would be, this growth area or whatever. To me, it was just a way to differentiate my knowledge. I'm going like, hey, if I can do, I always remember I would be like, if I can walk through a lease, a turnkey data center lease, and go through the SLAs and negotiate all those, going through an office lease is like it feels great.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
just a way to differentiate.